I clicked, and let's advance. Okay, so let me give you the bottom line here. The point that I am trying to share today with this presentation is how a little bit of qualitative exploration can sometimes take you a long way, even when you don't know where you want to start or exactly where you want to wind up. So obviously this is a qualitative presentation. And the inspiration for this session actually came in part from a quick email conversation that I had with Ray last year, where he was talking about hypothesis testing in qualitative research, and I just mentioned that qualitative often needs to happen in situations where you aren't even ready to form hypotheses because you don't even know what you don't know yet. And this project I'm going to tell you about is one of those situations. And so a little bit of background. I'm going to share some learning from research on research that was conducted recently by the global team of qualitative experts who are associated with thinkglobalqualitative.com. Okay? And this is currently 11 members in this network who are based in Canada, Germany, India, UK, Mexico and South America, France, South Africa, Hungary, and 3 of us are based in the US, 1 in California, 1 in the middle of the country in Tennessee, and I'm in New York City. And we also all have extended networks that we can tap into when we need to expand our reach into other countries or other languages or other categories. So I'd like to just say that one of the things that I have really valued about working with this team is that when we're asked to do multi-country projects, we have the ability to make the whole process of designing and conducting and interpreting the research as flexible and as iterative as it really needs to be, which is something that is not always easy to do when you're dealing with multiple languages in multiple countries. And but I'd like to just give you some insights into what we've learned that's made it possible for us to do this. Okay. I also will say that another thing I appreciate about this group is that it's very interesting and curious group of minds. We spend lots of time just voluntarily learning about each other's countries and cultures, and it's endlessly fascinating. So what we're going to cover is how and why we did this project, what we got out of it, why we care, and where it's going next. So what motivated us to do this project was 2 things. One is the needs of our network, being able to really master more ways to provide the kind of research that we can provide to clients. What we've been doing is periodically we will do real self-funded research on research projects just to simply figure out better ways to work for our clients. And that's partly because we need to have real visible examples of ways to do qualitative around the world that we're free to share publicly with clients, because they just need to see what the possibilities are in order to be willing to try them and feel comfortable. And because we just really like to practice what we preach, we try to learn new things whenever we can. And then the second factor that led us to do this project was our clients' needs. And what some of us were finding during the past year in particular, as the economic situations have been getting a little better, at least in some of our countries compared to the previous several years, we've been getting some more questions from clients about things like how to detect global new product and service opportunities more quickly. They also are interested in ways to get their target consumers into the development process sooner before they go marching down the wrong path too far. And in some cases, we had clients coming and saying, listen, we're feeling a little brain dead. Our innovation efforts had to be limited in recent years due to the economic constraints we were facing. Or in a couple of cases, they said, we've been doing the same types of products and services for a long time, and we're just having trouble getting our heads out of the box. And so they also would raise some interesting questions like, can you help us figure out whether the new ideas that we're thinking about are really innovative or not. You know, are they ideas that are maybe past their prime, or are they maybe ideas that are way too far ahead of their time and, you know, the world isn't ready for them? You know, can you help us with that? So these are all wonderful challenges that we were facing, and so we said, let's focus a project, one of our research on research projects, on trying to tackle some of those issues. Okay, and essentially, you know, we said the overall focus was to try to say, what can we do to help clients find, discover, or develop ideas that the world is almost ready for? So, what did we do? First, let me back up. First, we had to define some global objectives for our team overall. And we did this by conferring as a team, which we often do, in order to choose a topic that we thought would have global interest. And on one of our calls, there seemed to be one idea that was taking on a life of its own, because we found ourselves just spontaneously building on it, and which is always a good indicator that you have an idea that has some potential growth opportunities to it. And the heart of the idea was, how do dog owners around the world think about the notion of good dogs and bad dogs? What do they do or wish they could do to encourage good dog behavior? And what's universal about this around the world, and what varies from one culture to another? Are we seeing, are these attitudes, do they seem to be something that's just eternal, that, you know, have been in the hearts and minds of humans for as long as they've been having domestic dogs? Or are there some new sort of attitudes or perceptions that we might be able to exploit? And overall, what can this whole core issue about beliefs and perceptions and actions that dog owners have related to good dogs and bad dogs that they are sharing their lives with? Okay, so in order to get this focused and get it organized, we decided to do that each country would do one or more projects covering their country. And in the case of the U.S., we said most of us here had some experience with actual pet product or service clients. And we also have a lot of access to secondary research here. And just as consumers, we're very much aware of how well-developed and huge the market is for dog-related products and services. We've kind of gotten to the point here where we have more dogs than kids in homes, and it's very, very common for people to have dogs as their first child when they are a young couple or young singles, and to be their last child, you know, as later in their lives. But we didn't really know how similar or different the dog category would be in other countries. So, as I said, in each country we set up, we decided to conduct one project that would give us the lay of the land and help us really get a better understanding of the overall context in the current market. Okay? In the case of the U.S., our colleague in the west of the U.S. in the Pacific region, Jay Zaltzman, set up one project for himself that focused on people in his area, all within the same town. And then Rebecca Bryant, based in Tennessee, and I decided to partner up and cover include participants from the central and eastern parts of the U.S. in the project that we were doing, because we wanted to partner up because we had some ideas that we both shared about innovation techniques. So what we did was, and I will show you how this looked to participants in a moment, we all agreed on the characteristics of people that we wanted to include in our projects. They were in all countries. They were people who had one or two dogs living in their home, mostly in single-family homes with some apartment dwellers or condominium dwellers were appropriate. They all needed to have a good level of smartphone and computer experience. They had to have recent phones, and I'll show you why in a moment. We excluded anybody that was in a pension, and depending on the country, we used different combinations of social media and classic qualitative recruiting in order to find these people. And in the and here I'm just showing you an overview of the dog participants that Rebecca and I had in our U.S. board. We had overall 12 households with 1 or 2 dogs, and a great variety of breeds, ages ranging from 1 to 12 years, and every kind of variety and every personality that you can possibly imagine in our sample. Now, we also had decided up front that we wanted to do this project in a way that was going to give us the most flexibility and the most opportunity to really collaborate across all of the countries. So we all partnered with, for this project, with Visions 5, who very kindly allowed us to use their integrated mobile and computer-based board platform. So we wound up designing the project to try to take advantage of all of the different versatile features that were available by using this type of supporting tool. One of the most important features of it was it gave all of us on the research team the ability to see what each other was doing, each country was doing while their projects were in progress. And generally speaking, there was we worked in a way where we had a predetermined overview of what we needed to do and what we needed to come away with from the project, but we did allow flexibility from country to country, simply doing adaptations that were appropriate based on cultural differences that the researchers knew they had to adapt for, and also allowing some flexibility for pursuing different types of issues beyond the basic things we wanted to learn about. So we all started out by doing some kind of diary exercise that covered lots of activities that the dog owners and the dogs were having in their homes on a daily basis and away from home in some cases. In the case of the board that Rebecca and I worked on in the U.S., we set up our first phase of the project to begin with people using just their smartphones to be able to capture lots of examples of their life with their dogs. And I'll show you examples of those in a moment. Then all of the projects in each country also went into a second phase that involved some group discussion, which was generally done on computer so that people really could have good visibility of the overall flow of the discussion and really be able to interact with each other easily. And that tended to focus on new product opportunities. But what we weren't doing, we decided up front we were not going to do that in a way whereby we would be presenting people with concepts or anything like that. But what we were doing instead was using what we had learned during the diary process during that phase to find areas of potential new product opportunities to focus on during the group discussion phase. Then some of the countries went ahead and did a third phase, and we each kind of took those in our own direction depending on what we were learning from our individual projects. In the case of Rebecca's and my board, we decided to focus on idea building using a combination of smartphone access and computer access, where we identified some core paths to potential new products and gave people a few tools and a little bit of information to work with and had them build on those ideas and take them in a direction that really felt to them like it was going to result in having an even better life with their dog. Okay. So I'll show you examples of all these in a moment. In addition to the smartphone and the computer access and the blended access that we used, we also communicated with people through email, in our case twice a day, early in the morning and in the evening. So they were, and frankly, by the time we started with by the time we were a few days into the diary, they were very well acquainted with us, and had really developed a great sense of rapport and trust with the research team, which then carried over really well into once we opened it up to group discussion. Okay. All right, I'm going to just show you a couple of examples of what we were getting as this process unfolded. So first, I'll show you some examples from the individual smartphone diaries where, as I said, we simply focused on asking people to show us examples of some of the different types of things that happened over the course of a day with their life with their dog. And we also inserted some questions of the day to get into more discussion.
We don't have to.
Okay. For example, we said, show us where do your dogs sleep? Just show us, where else do they lounge or hang out? Where do they spend their time? Where do they eat, or how do they eat? And like this is just one example of a little video where this dog is being fed by the 3-year-old girl in the household, and she got to do it that day. Apparently, it's something that the kids in the household fight over all the time as to who gets to feed the dog. So she got to do it on this particular day. Then we had lots of little, videos and photos of dogs going outside to do what they needed to do to answer nature's calls. And Ray and I were chatting actually before the session started about how this was the coldest winter in the U.S. in 30 years. This is some evidence of it. We also found lots of interesting ways that the dogs just hang out and spend their time. This particular one seems to favor hanging out in one of the kids' messy closets and just meditate or whatever it is that she's doing. And also hanging out away from home. This lucky little dog got to go on a beach vacation during the project with her family. And actually, this is a good example of the kind of flexibility that we were able to have with the project, given the way that we had set it up, because lots of other things happened during the course of the project that we didn't really expect, but they didn't really stop the flow of people interacting. For example, one of the families added a new puppy to the family. One of the human couples got married and went on their honeymoon during the project. One of the dogs, sadly, actually died just as the project was getting started. So we that household only had one dog to participate instead of 2. And we had all sorts of other things going on during this project, in addition to horrible ice storms, major flu problems, and Gmail going down for 12 hours, and most of our people were Gmail users, so that was not a happy thing, but everybody bounced back, and we were able to accommodate these things and actually managed to get 100% completion from our lovely participants. Some of the other things we picked up in our diary exercises were things like play dates. This is a dress-up play date between one of the sheepdogs and her little neighbor. And we saw lots of varieties of dogs chasing kids, kids chasing dogs, a very high level of exercise. It made me think, gee, maybe I should get a dog instead of a personal trainer. It might be less expensive. And also dogs hanging out with adults and their human parents. On the left side, a typical moment where the little spaniel is sitting on the back of the couch while the human mom is watching TV. On the right-hand side, a different type of example where this little dog refused to leave the side of her human mom after that woman had her wisdom teeth extracted. So this this little picture went on for 2 days. And we got lots of examples of how much dogs love to be on the go, riding in vehicles, and many, many examples of dogs being good. For example, on the left, the little Yorkie there is doing her daily job, which is to supervise the pool cleaning machine. And she does it with great concentration. And on the right-hand side, the German Shepherd is just doing one of his daily good dog things, which is playing nice with his favorite toy. We also had great examples of what exactly happens when good dogs are being bad. And for example, in lower center, we've got that dog got his human managed to catch him in the act of trying to steal the bowl of cereal from the breakfast counter. Upper left, the big German Shepherd has been reprimanded and has retreated to his usual spot on the bed where he's either repenting or pouting, but whatever he's doing, that's his routine every time that he gets called a bad dog. And on the right-hand side, one of our participants said, "Oh, you want to know what it's like when the dogs are bad? Well, let me show you an example." And she reenacted a little video for us where she said, and what we're seeing here is the last frame of the video where the dogs are just frozen in mortification because what the young woman did was ran the video camera and said, "Okay, which of you two dogs farted?" And they just froze, just completely mortified. Then, I'm sorry, let me go back one. But where we really started to see some very interesting things in terms of the way the humans were reacting were moments like this, moments where the dogs are, I guess, being good or bad, but I would describe it more as just being indifferent. These are two Aussie sheepdog sisters here, and their human dad said he wanted to show us how obedient they were. And so he turned on his iPhone, and he simply said to the dogs, "Sit." And the one on the left immediately did, got right down, sat, stayed, and kept her eyes locked on her daddy, as asked. The one on the right, however, despite the fact that the dad repeated exactly the same way the command to sit that, they've apparently always obeyed, the one on the right just stood there licking her chops, looking at the ceiling and around the room as if, she seemed to be saying, "You talking to me?" And I was surprised that the fellow sent in the video, but I was really glad that he did because it was just another moment for him where he just didn't know what was happening with his dog. It's funny that shortly after we finished this project, this cartoon appeared in my email. It's a cartoon from the New Yorker magazine where two dogs are walking along and one of them is saying, "It's always sit, stay, heel. It's never think, innovate, be yourself," which just seemed pretty funny given what we had seen. Another occurrence that seemed to have a lot of energy around it was dogs just being indecipherable or undecipherable. What you see on the left hand here is the beginning of a video where this German Shepherd is sitting on the couch that faces out to the front yard, and he just barks his head off, and his human mom captured this and gave us a commentary about why she did. And the reason is that he does this sometimes. He, like many of the other dogs, is a really good doorbell for the house, and the owners appreciate that. But then there are times when he goes off and barks and barks and barks, and the owner cannot see anything out there that would be a reason for the dog barking. But is concerned, you know, that maybe he knows something that she doesn't, and it's disconcerting because she just isn't sure when to pay attention and when not to sometimes. Another example of dogs just, you know, being hard to decipher, it was the little one on the right woke up one morning and was limping for no apparent reason. The owners couldn't think of any reason why that would be happening. And what was troubling to them was not knowing if she was in pain, not knowing whether or not to get attention, you know, medical attention, veterinary attention for the dog or not. And again, just kind of having the frustration of wishing that they could speak the same language as the dogs and just be able to communicate a little better somehow. And that seemed, you know, it was interesting how often this started to come up and how concerned the owners were when they just didn't know what was going on. So, and also we had lots of examples of dogs being destructive, which they do. We had several people showed us, you know, collections of destroyed property, full of stories about how in one case they had put a new lattice around the pool in their yard, and their little dog just tore it up because she was no longer able to sit under the pool where it was nice and comfortable and cozy for her. So they just redesigned the lattice and rebuilt it in such a way that the dog could get access. It was very interesting to see when owners would blame the dog for being bad and when they would blame themselves for putting the dog in a bad situation. So we even saw some examples of that kind of pulled the whole family dynamics together. And this, I'm showing you this one because this was a situation where the participants just gave us 4 tiny little video clips, and they didn't even bother to explain what was going on until later on. But in the first video clip, we could see 2 dogs very nervously standing by the door to the garage, listening to a few little sounds in the garage, and just listening as hard as they could. We had no idea what was happening. But then in the second day, we saw a tiny video of in the family basement where the mom of the house is holding the 2 dogs very carefully while the dad carries in a little kitty. And they're just introducing this kitty to the dogs. The third day, a little more introduction where the children of the household are holding 2 little kitties and sitting at the head of the parents' bed while the 2 doggies are allowed to try to, you know, lean over the foot of the bed and sniff the kitties. And then by the 4th day, this drama had a very, very happy ending because in the picture on the right, lower right, the woman of the house is happily lying on the living room couch with the two little kitties, you know, on her chest, while the dogs are just lounging up on the back of the sofa as calm as could be. And then the other picture on the 4th day was a tiny little video showing how the big dog was down on the floor trying really hard to get under a very low cabinet because he just wanted to play with the kitten who was had parked herself underneath this low piece of furniture and such. So even without getting any narrative of what was going on here, we were able to really understand a whole lot about how this family interacted. And the kids actually did the video work in this particular case. We were able to see how they interacted and the different roles and the sensitivity involved and, you know, who's who within this family unit. We were a little fortunate, Rebecca and I, because we were not among the very first to run our projects. We've learned in past work that we've done as a network that wherever possible, it's a good idea to phase out these research on research projects so that we have the benefit of learning from each other as we go along. And one of the things that we saw in some of the first countries that did their project was they were trying to be a little more precise and than we were in the diary phase of the project, really trying to get more frequent input from people and more specific input. And what we eventually decided to soften that up a bit, because what became apparent quickly was dogs are creatures of habit, and it does become somewhat repetitive if you ask people to document what's going on in their lives, especially asking them to do it several times a day. Some of the earliest results were a little bit like this example. Again, this is a cartoon by Roz Chast, who is another cartoonist for the New Yorker magazine, where she created a diary of a cat. And what this diary says is, the first day today I got some food in a bowl. It was great, and I slept some too. The next day, played with yarn, got some food in a bowl, had a good nap. Next day, slept, food, yarn, fun. And it goes on and on and on. And we realized that it would be, the more flexible we could be with people, the more informative and the more inclusive their responses were going to be. And that did seem to work well as we modified the plan over the course of the other countries. And we also did something which was to give people a chance to talk in more depth by giving them questions of the day. Things like, what are the best aspects of your life with your dog or dogs? What are the dog's favorite things? How do you handle it when you want to teach your dog something new or train them to behave in a certain way? Difficulties experienced, products and services that you might want but haven't ever been able to find, things like that, where it was just something easy to talk about that they could expound on in the course of doing their daily diary activities. And what we got was, this is just one example, was really very rich and in-depth input to these one-off questions that we had during each day of the diary. This fellow has summarized in one nice big paragraph the overall meaning of that his dog has had in his life, which has been very touching. And this was not at all unusual in terms of the kinds of input that we managed to get this way. When we going through this smartphone exercise, again, it's not that we were trying to document a day in the life of all of our participants, but we really wanted them to have the opportunity to pay attention to what their life was like with their dog and think about things, how opportunities for that life being even better. Okay, and it seemed to warm them up very well, because once we did then get people into group discussion mode, which, first of all, I'm sorry, the individual diaries, we only spent about 4 to 5 days to go through that process. And then in our case, our group discussion was covering just 3 days, where people would log in and essentially talk to each other about the roles of their dogs in their lives, recommendations to each other about products and services and things that they have found valuable for taking care of their dogs. And then we did a little bit of brainstorming of products and services simply based on things that people had mentioned in the earlier diary exercises. And we kind of pulled out a couple of key things, presented them as really tiny one-sentence ideas, and gave people a choice of which one or more of those ideas they wanted to engage in discussions with. And then we said, because we had, by this point, we were already detecting that because these people were, smartphones and such were part of their lives, that we decided to focus the rest of our their digital devices help make their lives even better? What opportunities may be out there to exploit? Okay, so during the group discussion, we touched on that a bit in terms of asking how they might make some of the ideas that we presented to them smarter for their lives. Then the last phase, we took a little break for a couple of days and then had people come back for just a few more days of idea building. Okay, and we approached this by focusing on expanding ideas as much as we could, not on evaluating ideas. Okay, we never asked anybody to rank or rate or give their opinions. And what we did during this idea building phase was to give people some tools and some information to work with. The tools we gave them were just very, very simple tips on how, ways to help let an idea grow. And they were, some of them are just based on very, very popular, common types of idea generation and idea building techniques that many qualitative researchers are familiar with. Things like, take an idea. If you have an idea, first of all, we gave them an area within the platform called an idea bank that each of them had, and we tried to make it easy for them to always be able to find that, no matter how they were connecting with the platform, where they could just park pieces of ideas and such. And then we just gave them some tips on how to help ideas grow and how to help build them. Non-judgmental approaches, things like making notes to yourself before you go to sleep at night, and then continuing the note when you wake up in the morning after your brain's had a little chance to cook it overnight. Simple things like that. We didn't tell them they had to do all of those things, but we just gave them a few tools that they may not have thought of. And we also gave them some information that was kind of like raw material that could help them expand their thinking. And here are a couple of examples. We call them FYIs. And rather than developing concepts to show them, what we did was simply go to the most recent news coverage that was coming out concerning some things that were related to biometrics and animals, and especially dogs, and some things that just were communication aids. On the left-hand side, we showed them a little video and had them go to a website to look at a product called Tile. This is a little tracking device. It was originally developed for computers and gadgets and things like that, where you stick one of these on your computer, and then if your computer gets lost, it can be detected by all of the people who are within a certain radius of wherever that computer is. And so you have like a whole network that can help you find your computer or whatever it is that you have lost. We gave them a whole story that had been very recently in the news, in a couple of stories that had been in the news in conjunction with the Consumer Electronics Show, which happens at the beginning of each year in Las Vegas. And one of them was about a new kind of wearable device for dogs. Some people said, this is kind of like Google glasses but for dogs. Okay. And we also just threw in a little quiz to see if people had an idea any idea whether dogs have some way of identifying themselves, like do they have unique paw prints, do they have unique nose prints or unique tongue prints. And if you'd like to type in your answer or answers into the chat area, it would be kind of interesting to see what you all think, and I'll tell you in a moment what the actual answer is. And then we also, I'll come back to this in a moment, we also included another FYI story, which was about a new product at the Consumer Electronics Show called Voice, V-O-Y-C-E, which is a type of dog collar that measures blood pressure heart rates, a number of physical, characteristics of the dogs, and has the ability to connect with a major veterinary network for diagnosis and helping owners decide whether they need to get attention for their dogs or not. So at any rate, the idea here was to just mainly give people a few tools and some real-world information that they could factor into thinking about possible ways to make their lives with their dogs even better. And then when we saw that that they were actually building on taking this material and making it theirs. Okay, they were really trying on these ideas, and with very little direction, just a little bit of encouragement from us, they were really personalizing these concepts in ways that made sense to them. So then we did decide to try just one very general little concept on them, and this is a completely made-up product. It's, this isn't something that actually exists, but we said, just think about the idea of being able to have have something like this where you can have pads. You can buy these little pads, use them one at a time or several of them in your house, and you can program it so that it recognizes your dog's unique nose. We did tell them that the correct answer to the quiz was dogs have unique nose prints. And you could we gave them some, based on things that they had told us they would like to be able to do, we then just gave them some simple explanations of how these nose pads could enable them to do things like unlock the dog door so that only the dog can get in and out of the dog door when they want to by putting their nose on touching their nose to the dog door nose pad. Things like if you're away leaving the dog at home all day, you can have the ability to use your smartphone, which would also connect with these devices, to be able to just dispense a treat to your dog if you wanted to do that while you're not there with them. Have the ability to make sure the water bowl is full, different things like that that either you or your dog can control. And we thought, this was one of the things that we were doing because we were thinking, is this something people are willing or interested or ready to do? Does this sound believable or possible to them? Or does it sound like an improvement over what they're doing, how they're handling things right now? Or does it sound like too much work, et cetera, et cetera? And what was really, really interesting to see was, oh, I'm sorry, let me back up, that the answer was pretty much yes to all of the above. And every person, put their own personal touch on these things and came up with ways that they saw some real advantages to having the ability to communicate more in more ways, and in some cases more fully than they could with their dogs without having a way to connect like this. The ideas all fell into 4 general areas. One of them had to do with containing and protecting your dog. For example, one of the fellows very quickly came up with the idea of being able to create and monitor a movable perimeter, or a mobile bubble, we kind of called it, around his dog inside the home or outside the home by using his smartphone to be able to create a GPS perimeter around the location of his dog. Another category they came up with had to do with caring for the dog. I mentioned a few examples of this. The idea of making it possible to let your dog control some of the things that he or she needs, things like being able to get more fresh water or more food, or getting outside into the fresh air, even possibly some administration of medicines and such, because we did have dogs that were, especially the older ones that had a number of chronic diseases that took a lot of care, on a daily basis. And a third area that they came up with was having something that was going to help them with the the problem of the dogs being undecipherable that we talked about a little bit earlier. So for some, it was really more a matter of some kind of language training or translation system that you could have in your pocket, in your smartphone, to help you recognize over time what your dog's barks or body language or other signals really mean. Okay. And then a fourth area, it really had to do with companionship, and especially for the folks who were away from home during the day or had to leave the dog by themselves for several hours. People realized, they already knew that they could have webcams in there to use webcams to monitor their phones, and they were pretty familiar with using baby monitor equipment and things like that. But it hadn't occurred to anybody that they could do more than just monitor using webcams or other types of tools like that, but that they could use them to have some two-way interaction with their pet, whether it's just a little conversation, or whether it was, again, like being able to remotely trigger a toy or a ball to roll, or trigger a toy to play with the dog or something like that. But the minute they realized that two-way communication could be possible when they weren't at home, they were all over it and came up with a number of products that they wished for at that point. So I'm going to wrap up right now, and just to say, okay, why did this project matter? Well, it gave us lots of new insights about how to make it easy for people to contribute really early in the process of trying to figure out how to focus your or your clients' innovation efforts. Okay, and we also learned, weren't really expecting this, but we also learned how valuable the use of photos and videos, which we'd all used many times before, but the way we were able to experiment in this project, we learned a lot about how using photos and videos can really help make an international project move more quickly, and kind of speed up the process of communication and understanding across the various countries, because we were quite surprised with how often we had visual input that did not depend on language. We didn't have to translate every single thing at every step of the way in order to know what's going on. What's coming up next, there's going to be a number of different presentations and articles on other aspects of this project coming from other members of the network. So we'll, I believe you'll be seeing those if you follow the announcements of activities for the research industry. And I hope that you have a chance to pick up some other learning from them. So Ray, do we have any questions?